he was used as experimentation for CIA mind control MK Ultra.
Just when you think you know everything about a story, you realize that you don't. Before we get into today's video, I just want to let you guys know that this video is for educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere, in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope you all are having a wonderful week so far. I hope everybody's feeling good and feeling great. So today in this video, you guys, some of y'all may have heard about this story before. I've heard about this story before, but there are layers to this that is not always told. There is a whole background and alleged three-letter entities that are involved in this situation that I feel like is really interesting to talk about. We're going to talk about it today. Before we get into it, though, I did want to let you guys know, if you don't already know, hi, my name is Christina. I do have a second channel, which is Casually Christina. We just do things more casually over there. I also have a Patreon. My Patreon's for 18 and up. And over there, we talk about more personal stuff. We go live over there. There's a $2 tier for all the true crime stuff that cannot go onto YouTube due to their terms and policies. That goes over on my Patreon under the $2 tier. Just make sure you read the full about section and what each tier offers before you join. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Like to Know It. And Like to Know It is a platform where you can find links to a lot of things that you guys ask me about and that I use that I love. Everything from skincare, hair care, clothing items, furniture, workout gear, gift ideas, anything that you guys ask about or I want to link over there, I do. And all of those platforms are linked down in the description box if you would like to come and check me out. And one more thing, I need to let y'all know I'm not a professional. Everything in this video is alleged. Everything. I pull all of my information from very public sources and news sources, and in this case, government documents that is already out there. Please go do your own research, form your own opinions. Just don't show hate to anybody anywhere. So let me just tell y'all about Theodore. So Theodore Kaczynski, he was also known as Ted. He was born on May 22nd in 1942. He was born in Chicago to his parents, Wanda and Theodore. His dad's name's Theodore as well. Now, Theodore and Wanda, they were Polish Americans who got married on April 11th of 1939. And Theodore, the dad, worked as a sausage maker. When Ted was about 9 months old, he had a severe allergic reaction to something, and he had to be hospitalized for several days. Now, during this time of him being hospitalized, so you imagine this is new parents, this is their first child, their son, Ted, 9 months old, has a severe allergic reaction, he goes into the hospital. Back then in the 1940s, when he went into the hospital, they did not allow the parents to come stay in the hospital with their little ones while they're in there, which seems absolutely bonkers now when you think about it. Like, imagine you have no idea what's going on in there the whole time. So Ted at 9 months old was pretty isolated during this hospital stay. And his parents have always wondered if that may have had an effect on his emotional development. I wonder about that because, I mean, it's just a couple days when he was 9 months old. He had the rest of his childhood to grow and develop. Unless they did something to him in there, unless he had an allergic reaction, they was experimenting with all kind of stuff. I don't know how that would be, but that's what his parents thought. However, Ted got better after a few days and he was sent back home and things returned to normal after that. So then moving on to elementary school, Ted was described by school administrators as healthy and well-adjusted. In 1952, 3 years after Ted's little brother was born, the family all moved to Evergreen Park, Illinois, and at his new middle school, Ted scored 167 on an IQ test. Because of this, he was able to skip the 6th grade. And I breathe deeply because my son went through something like this as well, okay? Ted later talked about how this had a big effect on him. He said that after he skipped a grade, he felt out of place. He felt bullied by the older kids, whereas before, when he was in his regular grade with the kids his age, he felt more like a leader, right? Because he was more ahead, so he was a leader. But then you put him with the students that are older than him, he kind of felt emotionally behind.
So what's 167? That's 1 out of a million people.
It was recommended by the school that he skip a grade when he was only 10 years old, so to skip from 5th to 7th grade. The problem with it is he was with older kids that he didn't know. He became more and more socially isolated.
Neighbors of the Kaczynski family said that they seemed like civic-minded folks who did everything they could for their sons. They said that both Ted and his little brother David were very smart, but Ted stood out. Although he was quite smart, he definitely came off as a bit of a loner. He stayed to himself a lot. Now, as Ted moved into high school, he continued to thrive academically. He also played the trombone and he was in the marching band. He was a member of the math, biology, coin, and German clubs. And at this stage of his life, Ted became very interested in math. And when I learned about all this, I said, okay, you've got two parents here that obviously recognize that their son is highly, highly intelligent. He's ahead for his age. He's already been put a grade ahead, and they're keeping him involved in stuff, right? He's in all these different clubs. He plays the trombone. He's in the marching band. They weren't keeping him isolated. They were doing their best to keep him involved. It is said that Ted would spend hours studying and solving very advanced math problems. He actually even joined a club of other like-minded classmates that referred to themselves as the briefcase boys because they all carried around briefcases. I mean, how cute is that? Now, again, Ted was doing so well in school that as he was in high school, he ended up skipping the 11th grade. So he was in 10th grade. He skips the 11th grade, but then he goes to summer school and he completed high school and he graduated when he was just 15 years old. At this point, Ted was encouraged to apply to go to college at Harvard University. And so he did. And not only that, Ted was given a full scholarship. So now you can imagine his parents, you guys, especially back then when it was like going to college was like the thing to do, right? If you go to college, wow, right? He graduates high school at 15 and then he gets a full ride scholarship to Harvard. So he started to attend Harvard in 1958 when he was just 16 years old. But here's the thing. One high school classmate has said that he didn't believe Ted was emotionally prepared for that. So although he might have been academically prepared, emotionally, I mean, 16 is such a hard time in teenagers' lives. I mean, there's puberty, like now you're putting him with adults. This person said that even with all of that, Ted still packed everything up and he was sent to Harvard so quick, he didn't even have time to get his driver's license yet. Ted was considered a math prodigy at Harvard, and he lived at 8 Prescott Street, which was actually a small home that was used just for the youngest and the most gifted students. But Ted only lived in that house for his first year at Harvard. The next 3 years, he spent at the Elliott House. Ted's roommates and classmates said that Ted was very intelligent, but he was also very reserved socially. Here's where things start to get interesting. In Ted's second year at Harvard, Ted participated in a study led by Harvard psychologist Henry Murray. And I'm going to say psychologist because when you really look into this guy, he never went to school to be a psychologist. He was just a psychologist at the school, allegedly. Okay, this is all rumors on the internet. Allegedly, this guy was a biochemist. He was not a psychologist. Anyways, Henry Murray was considered at Harvard as not only a psychologist, but a prominent psychologist. And he developed a theory of personality called personology. Henry said that he wanted to understand the whole person through intensive evaluation of normal personality and deep diving into a person's psyche. Sounds scary. Imagine going on a first date and a guy saying, I want to get to know you by knowing your psyche and deep diving into your personal thoughts. You'd be like, hold up here. Can you just pay for the French fries? We got to go. That sounds very serious. Anyways, Henry was also known for creating the TAT test and for his ethically controversial psychological experiments. And I say controversial very lightly. We're going to get there here in a second. For him doing experiments on students like Ted. Subjects in this study We're told that they would debate personal philosophy with fellow students, and they were asked to write literal essays detailing their personal beliefs and their aspirations. So let me put this in layman's terms for you. You got Ted, who is a teenager, should still be in high school, going to a prom at this point. Now he's in college, living on campus with all these adults, and he's looking up to his professors, okay? He gets the school psychologist says, I want to run an experiment on you and some of the other students, brings them in, puts them under these lights in these interrogation settings, right, on these tables, and says, write down your deepest beliefs and aspirations. So it'd be like, my beliefs is Jesus is Lord. My aspirations to provide my child with a safe home and a good environment so he can go off into the world and be, an asset to the community and love others and spread love. Like, my aspirations is to work hard and to take care of my family, right? The things that are basically the most important to you deep down inside, your beliefs and your aspirations. So he's got them writing these out in essays. Then get this, he takes the essays and they're given to an anonymous person who would intentionally confront and belittle the students in these, what Henry called vehement, sweeping, and personally offensive attacks using what the students wrote in their essays. So again, you've got somebody like Ted, who is a teenager in college with this psychologist, and he's writing this essay about his deep aspirations and beliefs, and then an anonymous person takes it and rips them apart. Basically, oh, you believe in God? Where's your God? Where's your God when people are sick? Or oh, you want to be a good person? You'll never be a good person. Look, belittles them, and to the point that Henry said, so rips them to shreds. And this is a part of a Harvard experiment that was going on with these students. Ted spent 200 hours doing this, you guys. And some of y'all may not understand, but any of y'all that have ever had teenagers, you understand how important these years are in their developments, in their life, in their brains, in their beliefs. And then you put them in this super prestige college. He gets a full ride and he spends 200 hours that we know of. This is just what's documented, where they take his aspirations and his beliefs and they rip him to shreds over it. It just makes you wonder how he felt afterwards. Again, this is just what we know. You walk out of that type of thing thinking, well, gosh, I don't want to tell anybody my beliefs or aspirations because now I feel dumb. Anyways, now how does all of this tie in to MK Ultra? Well, Henry Murray, the Harvard psychologist, had past connections to U.S. intelligence from his work with the OSS. Basically, think of the CIA before it was the CIA. This was during World War II. Okay. Now, MK Ultra's whole goal was to explore mind control, interrogation techniques, and to modify your behavior. They're known for their experiments, including psychological stress and non-consensual tests being performed on unknowing participants. Makes you wonder, would these things still be going on today? An example that I would give is maybe watching some of the news. You're watching the news and things are being regurgitated to people watching it over and over and over again on different news channels, and they don't even realize it.
And agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 The CIA was funding this exact kind of research already in other programs at this point. And this is just what has been documented that we know of.
The Unabomber, who was a professor of mathematics, was a victim of CIA mind control operation. This is all well documented. So he was used as experimentation for CIA mind control, MK Ultra, and then ends up becoming very violent, obviously, and disturbed person in the hills of Montana and starts sending around explosive devices. And he had this manifesto, and the manifesto that he wrote was all about warnings of technology. But his kind of psychosis was induced by MK Ultra. We know this because of the Church and Pike Committee that was constituted in the 1960s and 70s by Congress to look into all of the activity by the Central Intelligence Agency. The essence of the MK Ultra was that CIA was actively involved in trying to proliferate mass mind control, and also being able to find an individual subject and be able to change their behavior and maybe turn them into someone who was violent, who otherwise was not, to turn somebody into someone who was very manipulative, otherwise would not. So you could take a subject, and they do this through very similar to Clockwork Orange, right? That is like an example of MK Ultra, where they take you and you completely change. You're damaged. And they did this a lot with psychedelics.
So I don't know. It could just be, he just went to Harvard and he just had a couple 200-hour experiments done on him. They just want to know his dreams, aspirations, see how he would handle it under pressure. Who knows? What do I know? But I know my opinion would be that if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, there's a good chance that it's a duck. There's a whole MK Ultra rabbit hole, you guys, that shows that it was way more involved than any of that.
For years now, talk show hosts, people on television, people in sitcoms have been hired by the government to throw you off the track, to distract you, to make you laugh and stuff like that, make you happy and docile so you don't know what's really going on. When they get out there in the woods in a circle naked and they decide these things, and, and look at him trying to come it out. It's hilarious. And, and I'm sick of, hold on a second. You know what they're trying to do? Who? This thing is buzzing. Hold on. They're trying to turn us into, consumer drones of some sort. Hold on, I just got to get this.
But again, what do I know? So we're just going to move on here. Now, not to spoil the end of this video or jump too far ahead, but Ted's lawyers would later attribute Ted's hostility towards mind control techniques to his participation in that study. Yeah, I would too. And Ted himself said that he resented Henry Murray because of the invasion of his privacy from the experiment. However, Ted would later also say that he was quite confident that his experience with Henry Murray had no significant effect on the course of his life. But is that really true? I would beg to differ. I mean, I don't know. Again, he says it didn't have an effect on him, but a lot of people have things have an effect on them and they don't know. I mean, think about people, again, that still watch the news religiously to this day. And you think, well, it's not having an effect on me. Does it though? Does it deep down inside? Does it have an effect on you? And would Ted have even known, since it was all psychological, would he have even known the full effect that it had on his brain? I don't know. And if he was actually a part of a CIA-funded MK Ultra experiment, would he know? Probably not. Anyways, with all of that in mind, let's get back to what Ted Kaczynski did after participating in this study. So Ted went on to graduate from Harvard in 1962 with a bachelor's of arts in mathematics. He finished with a GPA of 3.12, and that same year, Ted went on and he enrolled in the University of Michigan, where he got his master's and his doctoral degrees in mathematics. This was in 1964 and 1967. Now, at this university, Ted's professors started saying different things about Ted. Very interesting, because he had been at Harvard doing all of that. Just what we know of, right? That's just what we know. One professor said that Ted was an unusual person. He said that Ted wasn't like any other graduate students. And other professors have talked about just how smart Ted was. And one person said it was not enough to just say that Ted was smart. He was beyond smart. He was easily one of the top students that they had ever seen. But again, he was very awkward socially. However, Ted was also seemingly hiding a darker side. For several weeks in 1966, Ted said that he had intense fantasies of being a female and decided that he wanted to transition. He felt so strongly about this, he set up a meeting with a psychiatrist and everything, But then he changed his mind while he was literally sitting in the waiting room. So he's having these intense, intimate fantasies of being a woman so much. And he's like, okay, I got to go see the psychiatrist. He's sitting in the psychiatrist's office. He's sitting there. He's like, no, I'm not going to tell him. I've changed my mind. I'm not going to tell him. So when he got into his appointment with the psychiatrist, he talked about a bunch of other things, but he never brought up the real reason why he made the appointment. Ted would later say after his appointment was over, he actually considered ending the psychiatrist's life and other people that he didn't like, but he decided no. So he sat there and thought, okay, I'm going to end the psychiatrist. This person wronged me, this person wronged me, this person wronged me, but then he talked himself out of it. Ted said that this was a major turning point in his life. He said, I felt disgusted about what my uncontrollable sexual cravings had almost led me to do. And I felt humiliated and I violently hated the psychiatrist. Just then, there came a major turning point in my life. Like a phoenix, I burst from the ashes of my desire to a glorious new hope. But then, over the next few years, it seemed like Ted just started living a relatively normal life again. It's like he was going in and out of these phases. In 1967, at 25 years old, so all of this has gone on under the age of 25 at this point, you guys, Ted became an assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley, where he taught math. He was the youngest assistant professor in the school's entire history at that point. However, in 1968, Ted's teaching evaluations suggested that he was not liked by his students. It said that he seemed uncomfortable teaching and that he taught straight from the textbook and he would not answer any questions. So basically, he's in there teaching them. He's like, he's reading it off. And then they would be like, I have a question. Nope. Like hardcore, no gray area with him. But it didn't really matter that he was getting these complaints because he had already accepted a new higher position and he was on track for tenure.
Won an award for his dissertation, in fact, his PhD in mathematics at Ann Arbor in Michigan, because he solved a theorem that had been thought unsolvable for decades by mathematicians. He solved it and published it.
But then, suddenly in June of 1969, out of nowhere, Ted just resigned. So he's got all this going on. He gets this like promotion type of thing, and then he just puts in his paperwork and says, I resign. The chairman of the mathematics department would later say that Ted seemed almost pathologically shy, and that as far as she knew, Ted hadn't made any close friends, and that anytime they actually tried to bring him into the swing of things, so they would invite him into things and try to get him involved, it just never really worked out with him. Now, after Ted resigned, he moved back to his parents' home in Lombard, Illinois. 2 years after that, Ted built a remote cabin outside of Lincoln, Montana. He wanted to live what he called a very simple life with no electricity and no running water. Basically, as you would think, he was living off-grid, right? Living off of the land. He worked a couple little odd and end jobs whenever he could, but most of his money that he was living off of, or his financial support, was coming from his family. Now, again, on the outside, to people that knew Ted, it seemed like he was living a somewhat normal life. Even if he was tinkling in a bucket and digging a hole to go potty, it was fine. He was doing just fine at this point. But in reality, behind the scenes, he was not doing just fine. In 1975, Ted started sabotaging new developments near his cabin by setting things on fire and by setting booby traps.
He was very happy when he first moved to the woods. He wrote rapturously about it, about how beautiful it was. Then planes started flying overhead. He noticed motorcyclists riding through the forest and disturbing the nature that he was glorying in. It turned to bitter hatred of the technological society. He viewed technology as evil, as the evolution of technology as evil, and the technical class as perverting the human spirit.
Then in the 80s and the 90s, Ted's neighbors said that they believed that he was attacking their dogs, that he was poisoning them. Ted later did admit that he was, and he even ended up ending one of the dogs' lives. Meanwhile, between 1978 and 1995, Ted started mailing and hand-delivering to people. Each explosive was increasingly sophisticated. The first one was mailed to Buckley Christ, who was a professor of material engineering at Northwestern University. It was May 25th of 1978. A package with Buckley's name was on the return part of the package, and it was found in a parking lot at the University of Illinois. So the package was there, it's in the parking lot, somebody finds it, and they return it back to Buckley because they believe that he was the one that sent it out. Now, when Buckley got this package, he realized that he didn't send it, so he was very suspicious of it. So he ended up calling the campus police. Well, Officer Terry Marker opened the package, and when he did, it exploded and it caused him minor injuries. The second one was sent about a year after the first one. It was sent to Northwestern University again, and this time it was a cigar box that was left on a table, and a graduate student named John Harris opened it. It went off and it caused him minor injuries. Then in 1979, one was placed in the cargo hold of American Airlines Flight 444. It was a Boeing 727 flying from Chicago to Washington, D.C. Smoke ended up coming out and was going into the plane, and this caused the pilots to conduct an emergency landing. When law enforcement looked into this, they said that that package that was put in there had enough power to completely obliterate the plane if it had went off. This one had this like barometer triggered device in it, and it ended up setting some of the mail bags on fire, which is what caused the smoke and made the pilots do the emergency landing. Thank God. The next one was sent to the president of United Airlines, Percy Wood. It went off and caused Percy to have cuts and burns over most of his body. Ted was leaving false clues on these packages as well. He made them hard to find so it would seem more legit. These clues were usually like little metal plates stamped with the initials FC hidden somewhere. And according to Ted, FC stood for Freedom Club. Ted would also include little bits of tree branches and bark in these packages. In 1981, Ted sent one with the return address to Leroy Wood Burnson, who was the Brigham Young University's professor of electrical engineering. Now, this package was found in the hallway at the University of Utah, and it was brought to the campus police, and it ended up being defused, thankfully. Then one was sent to Patrick C. Fisher, who was a professor at the Vanderbilt University. This one exploded when Patrick's secretary, Janet, opened it. She had injuries to her face and to her arm, but she thankfully survived. The next two were sent to Berkeley. The one in July of 1982 caused serious injuries to a professor, and 3 years after that, a graduate student who was a captain in the Air Force lost 4 fingers and vision in one eye when the package went off on him. The following month, one was sent to the Boeing company, but it ended up being defused, and the next one was in November of 1985. 2 professors were severely injured from that one, and then the next one was in late 1985, and it was found in the parking lot of a computer store in Sacramento, California. It, unfortunately, ended the life of the 38-year-old store owner. The next was again sent to a computer store. A man named Gary Wright was pretty injured when he opened it, and over 200 pieces of shrapnel entered his body. But this time, someone actually saw Ted while he was planting the package. This is when law enforcement put out a sketch of the suspect that showed a man with a hoodie on, with a mustache and aviator glasses. And I'm sure y'all have seen this picture. I mean, this picture is well known for this whole situation. Now, after the sketch went out of Ted with the aviator glasses on and the hoodie, he waited 6 years to send another package. And I need y'all to pay attention to this because this is a little interesting. I've seen a lot of stuff about this, like sea theories online, and it's probably nothing, but I still want to bring it up because it's interesting. So 6 years after that situation, in 1993, Ted sent a package to a man named Charles from the University of California. Now, mind you, Charles' last name is Epstein. This is a picture of him when that situation happened, okay? So it's Charles Epstein, okay? Charles lost several fingers, but he did survive. That same weekend, Ted sent another professor from Yale named David, okay? This guy right here, a package. David lost sight in one eye and hearing in one of his ears, and a portion of his right hand was missing. Now, this guy, David, ended up being let go from Yale when Epstein was busted the first time, okay? So here's a screenshot of an article from that. So he was working at Yale, and they released him because he was emailing, allegedly, Jeffrey about recommendations on girls and And the reason why I bring that up, it's probably nothing, is because Ted was not sending packages for 6 years. And the first time he sends packages is 2 in the same weekend to one person named Charles that looks like this, and the other package he sent to this guy David, who happened to be involved with Jeffrey. So it makes you wonder, was this just a really big coinky-dink, or did Ted know something? These packages that he was sending to certain people, did he know things about them? Not saying he should have done this. This doesn't mean it's right at all, but it makes you wonder where his head was at. What did he know about these people? Doesn't send a package for 6 years, then sends 2 in the same weekend to these people. I don't know. It's just really weird. Anyways, the next package that he sent was in 1994, and it was sent to an executive named Thomas. His life, unfortunately, was ended. And in a letter to the New York Times, Ted wrote that he sent this one to Thomas because Thomas was working with Exxon to repair their image after a big oil spill that happened. Thomas did, in fact, work for a PR company that considered Exxon to be one of their clients, but it's not 100% clear if Thomas ever actually did any work on Exxon's reputation after the oil spill. And I'm not saying that Thomas did, but when you think about the packages that he sent before, he could have sent this package to anybody. Did he know something or think that he knew something about Thomas? I don't know. It's very weird. Now, after that, the president of the timber industry lobbying group, Gilbert Murray, passed away, unfortunately, after opening a package that was actually addressed to the previous president of the company who had retired, you guys. That is so sad. A geneticist named Philip Sharp at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology got a threatening letter from Ted not long after that last incident. And then by this point, 16 total packages were attributed to Ted. And these packages ended 3 people's life and injured 23 others.
It was the beginning of a reign of terror during which he carried out a total of 16 bombings over the course of nearly 2 decades. For Kaczynski, these attacks were not random killings, but rather targeted strikes against the institutions he believed represented technological society.
His purpose was to wake people up to the dangers of technology.
Then in 1995, Ted mailed several letters to the media that outlined his goals and demanded that major newspapers print his 35,000-word essay. Hold up, because I need y'all to think about this. 35,000-word essay. Y'all don't remember being in school and writing an essay? You got a 1,000-word essay, 1,500-word essay, a 5,000-word essay. You're thinking, oh my gosh, right? A 35,000-word essay. He said, you need to print this in the newspaper. Basically, his book. Now, this 35,000-word essay is now considered to be Ted's manifesto. Ted said that he would stop sending these packages altogether. All the newspaper needed to do was print this 35,000-word essay. And there was a lot of debate on whether or not it should have been printed, but ultimately, the Attorney General and the FBI director at the time decided to go ahead and let it be printed, you guys. Can you imagine this time? Like, what? Now, I need to say, I don't know if any of y'all have read the manifesto, but the crazy thing is, Ted got a lot of things right. He had some kooky ideas, things I definitely don't agree with, but there was a lot of stuff that he said in there about technology and about what technology was doing to us and what it was going to do to us in the future that seems right on track. And in this manifesto, Ted always referred to himself as we or FC, the Freedom Club, although there was never any evidence that anyone else was ever working with Ted, and I don't believe they were either. Now, we're not going to go through the whole entire manifesto, but basically he said that he believed that technology was having a destabilizing effect on society and that he wanted everyone to live closer to nature.
Eventually, after a few weeks, I got to the point of saying, I think it might be 50-50 that my brother wrote that manifesto. His essential argument was that, we think technology gives us more control over our lives, but at a certain point, it becomes an illusion.
These packages were causing widespread panic, as you guys can't imagine getting a package. Like, I ain't opening that box of cookies from grandma. It could be anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, heck to the no. And law enforcement was really trying to figure out who was doing this so they could be stopped immediately. The task force dedicated to this cause ended up having 150 full-time employees. They were referred to as the Unabomber task force. There was a $1 million reward issued in 1980, okay? Imagine, $1 million is a lot now, right? Like, hello. But back in 1980, 45 years ago, $1 million was a lot more. Now, before Ted's manifesto was published, Ted's brother had actually been talking about this case with his wife when his wife told him that she was suspicious that the suspect was Ted. And you, wives, we already know. The men, no offense to the men out there, close y'all's ears. A lot of the times we're like, you don't see what's going on here? And they're like, huh? That's what was going on between David and his wife. David's like, can you believe this is going on? And she's like, David, it's Ted. Look how weird he is. He's out there peeing, And David's like, no way. He did not believe it. That was his older brother. He looked up to Ted. Ted's this like prodigy. He said, no way, not my brother. However, ever since his wife planted those seeds in his head, he started to look into things a little bit more and take what his wife said a little bit more seriously. And then when the manifesto came out, that's when it really got David's attention. David started searching through old family papers, and he found letters dating back to the 70s that Ted had sent the newspaper to protest technology. Yes, these papers had similar phrasings to the manifesto that was published. So David ended up hiring a private investigator in Chicago named Susan to secretly follow and investigate his brother Ted. This private investigation gathered enough information against Ted that David actually then reached out to the Washington, D.C. attorney, who then contacted the FBI. Several agents at the FBI determined that the papers that David had found and turned in were very similar to the manifesto that had been published. So the FBI got a search warrant. Finally, on April 3rd of 1996, the FBI arrested Ted. A search of his home led agents to find a package, different package parts, 40,000 handwritten journal pages that included all of these package making experiments and descriptions and things of this crimes, and even, again, a live package ready to go, ready to be mailed out right then and there. They also found what appeared to be the original typed manuscript. A federal grand jury indicted Ted in June of 1996 on 10 counts of illegally transporting, mailing, and using. Ted's lawyers tried to enter a plea of insanity on Ted's behalf to avoid the DP, but Ted asked them not to. So get this. They go in front of the judge and say, listen, this one right here, he's not all there. And Ted was like, don't say that. I am not insane. So he actually requested to fire these attorneys. He's like, Judge, listen, I'm not insane. I don't want to go for the insanity plea. I want new attorneys, and I want to hire these other attorneys who promised Ted that they would not try to get an insanity plea for him. So he's like, I'll take anybody else. I just don't want y'all to say that I'm crazy. Now, Ted wanted his new attorneys to base his defense solely on Ted's anti-technology views. So they did not want the defense to be anything else other than to get the message out. And when I saw this is what I think. This is my personal opinion here. Ted had worked so hard to try to get this message out, okay, of his fear of what technology was going to do to us and was going to do to the world. And nobody was listening to him. The manifesto thing didn't get enough attention. It didn't work. And the last thing he wanted was to go in front of a judge and be deemed insane and basically undo his manifesto and undo all of his work. He wanted to get it out again and use the trial to bring up his anti-technology views. However, This request was denied, and Ted ended up trying to end it all after that, but he was unsuccessful. Now, a psychiatrist evaluated Ted, and she decided that Ted had paranoid schizophrenia. But this diagnosis has been heavily criticized ever since that. People are like, nah, that's not what was going on with him. I mean, I don't know. In January of 1998, Ted was declared competent to stand trial. Prosecutors were seeking the DP, but Ted went ahead and pled guilty of all of the charges in January of 1998. He received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole in exchange for his guilty plea. Now, Ted actually tried to withdraw his plea. He claimed that the judge had coerced him, but the judge denied his request, and the U.S. Court of Appeals upheld that decision. What I think happened, allegedly, this is my opinion, I don't know. What I think happened is, I think they got Ted in a back room somewhere and said, listen, if you'll just go ahead and plead guilty, we'll let you give a speech at the end and you can tell your little anti-technology stuff or whatever. And then he went ahead and pled guilty. And then after he pled guilty, they didn't give him that option. And so he said that he was coerced in there. I do believe that he was talked into that, because all he wanted to do was get this message out. He never once said, I'm innocent, I should be let free. Never any of that. He just kept trying to get this message out. So I think it had something to do with that. Doesn't mean I think it's right. He should be in prison. He should be in prison for the rest of his life for what he did. Hello. But I think there's more that's gone on behind the scenes with Ted. In 2006, an auction of Ted's personal items were held.
The belongings were seized from Kaczynski's infamous shack in the Montana wilderness, where he was arrested 15 years ago. But perhaps most chilling, there are his papers. Thousands of pages, largely devoted to thoughts about what he came to see as a society consumed by the evils of technology. Posted pictures of Kaczynski's belongings on its Flickr internet site. A federal official told the Washington Post, "We will use the technology that Kaczynski railed against to sell artifacts of his life."
Then all the money that was made went towards the restitution that Ted owed the victims of his crimes. David, his little brother who got that $1 million, that $1 million reward for turning him in, he actually donated that to the victims and their families. And I thought that that was so wonderful, because I was like wondering, did he get that $1 million? Did he keep it? I mean, he could have kept it just fine, but he donated it. And I just thought that that was very admirable of him. In 2011, Ted was actually a person of interest in the Chicago Tylenol. Do y'all remember that? Ted was willing to provide a DNA sample to the FBI about it, but then he later changed his mind and he tried to use it as a bargaining chip for his efforts against the FBI's private auction that they were having with Ted's confiscated stuff. The U.S. government had actually seized Ted's cabin, and they put it on display at a museum in Washington, D.C. before it was transferred to an FBI museum in 2019. And by the way, I don't think he was a part of the Tylenol situation. Do y'all know about that, the Tylenol? There's documentaries about it out there. I think that was anyways. Then in March of 2021, Ted ended up being diagnosed with rectal cancer. Ted received chemo until March of 2023, and then he decided that he didn't want to do treatment anymore. It was too much on him. The side effects were too bad, and he gave up, right? On June 10th of 2023, Ted was found deceased in his cell, unresponsive, with no pulse, after he tied himself from a handicap rail with a shoelace. Now, CPR was given to Ted, but he was pronounced deceased at the hospital. He was 81 years old at the time. And I cannot imagine you guys going through cancer and those treatments in prison like that. And people do it every single day, which, again, he deserved to be there. He deserved to be there. I'm just saying, thinking of a person being in those shoes, because I'm never going to be in those shoes in the name of Jesus, and neither will any of y'all watching this, but how painful that would be, because you don't get pain meds in prison or anything like that. And he just said, that's enough, I'm done. So with all of that, this is another one of those cases where people have always wondered how someone like Ted could grow up with a seemingly normal life and become someone so evil at the end. Some people wondered if that stay in the hospital that he had back when he was 9 months old may have had something to do with who Ted would later become. I'm not sure if it did or it didn't, but remember, it was only a few days that he spent in this hospital. However, I don't know, what were they doing to him in there? I mean, with nobody watching, you really don't know. I will say this, though, his mother, and a mother knows her child, said that she thought Ted's personality changed when he came out. And I was trying to think, like, he's 9 months. How much could his personality have changed? Well, she said that before he went in, he was very affectionate, and when he came out, he was not affectionate. Then, like we talked about before, people wonder if the experiment that he participated in at Harvard with the professor Henry Murray is what either changed Ted or pushed him over the edge. And I'm telling y'all that, and I'd bet money on it. That had a big deal. Not saying it's everything, but I think it's probably the majority of it. It's very interesting that this guy, that he was a psychologist there, never went to school to be a psychologist, just happened to work with government intelligence, was there doing these experiments on these students. Very, very, very interesting. You know what else is interesting is Jeffrey Epstein. You know what I'm talking about? He was a teacher at a college too and never went to school to be a teacher. It's just weird. It's like they put these people in these positions. I mean, not saying you got to have a college degree to do everything, because I definitely don't believe that now in 2026. But it's very interesting nonetheless. Now, remember, Ted was just a teenager when he participated in this study. And any of y'all who have teenagers know how influential their brains are. So even if we just go with the mainstream story of what happened to him at that college, that participation was so intense and confrontational based on these essays of his beliefs and his aspirations, that had to have had an effect on him. And then we already know that Ted was a loner and he felt out of place and he was only a teenager there. Shame on them. Anyways, if any of this was really part of the MK Ultra program, imagine how much more intense that all really was that we don't even know about. It's not like one of those cases where we talk about the person showing signs of having issues from an early life. It just seemed to change after he went through that experience at that college. And remember, MK Ultra is not just some made-up sea theory, you guys. It was a real CIA program that focused on mind control, interrogation techniques, and behavior modification without people knowing. Meaning, you don't even know it's happening to you. You're watching the news, you're watching this, you're watching television, and things are happening and changing inside of you that you do not even realize. Even when you try to search Ted Kaczynski MK Ultra on TikTok, it gives you no results, which is really weird. It says this phrase may be associated with behavior or content that violates our guidelines. So you can look him up. You can look up Ted all day long. You can look up the word, but you can't look up them words together. Why is that? It's a little weird. Oh, and not to mention, Harvard completely sealed the records of Henry's experiments. So was Ted Kaczynski homegrown? Was this a genetic thing? Was this nature versus nurture? What do you think? Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Other than that, I love you guys. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Love you guys. Bye.